The year was 2287, and humanity had finally reached the stars. After 2 centuries of dreaming, building, and hopping, humans had created ships that could travel faster than light. They had found other intelligent life in the galaxy. The universe was no longer empty and lonely. Captain Minu stood on the bridge of the colony ship called New Dawn. He was 42 years old, with tired eyes that had seen too many problems during the long journey from Earth. His ship carried 300 families, all looking for a new home among the stars. Behind him, his wife worked in the medical bay, checking supplies and making sure everyone stayed healthy. Their daughter, only 8 years old, ran through the corridors with other children, playing games and laughing. Today was supposed to be a good day. They were stopping at Epsilon 7, a massive space station that floated between star systems. It was a neutral place where different species came to trade goods and information. Minu had been there once before, 2 years ago. Back then, everyone had been curious about humans. Some aliens had been friendly, others had simply stared. But things had changed. Humanity had met the Empire, and they did not like humans very much. There were huge creatures, standing nearly 3 meters tall. They had scales that glowed with soft blue and green light. 4 powerful arms extended from their bodies, and their eyes were cold and yellow like a snake's eyes. They controlled 400 star systems across the galaxy. They had technology that humans could only dream about. They had weapons that could destroy entire planets. And they thought humans were insects. Commander's voice crackled over the communication system. He was stationed at a human military outpost near the space station. New Dawn, this is Outpost. We're monitoring your approach. Everything looks clear, but be careful. They have been aggressive lately. Minu pressed the button to respond. Understood, we'll dock, get our supplies, and leave quickly. No problems. But Minu felt uneasy. Something in his gut told him this trip would not go smoothly. The New Dawn connected to Epsilon 7's docking port with a soft thud. The airlocks opened, and families began moving into the station. The marketplace was enormous, filled with creatures from dozens of different worlds. Some walked on legs, others floated through the air. Some spoke in musical tones, others in harsh clicking sounds. Translation devices on everyone's collars turned strange languages into words humans could understand. Held her mother's hand tightly, her eyes wide with wonder. Mom, look at that one. It has 6 eyes. Smiled, though her grip on his hand was firm. Stay close to me, sweetie. Don't wander off. Minu walked ahead, negotiating with the station master about docking fees. The alien behind the counter was small and blue, with antennae that twitched nervously. The fees have increased, Captain. They demanded it. All minor species must pay triple the normal rate. Triple, Minu's jaw tightened. That's robbery. That's the price of doing business in space, the alien whispered, looking around nervously. Just pay it and leave. Don't cause trouble. Behind them, a group of enforcers walked through the marketplace. They wore armor that shimmered with energy shields. One of them, a large male with dark red scales, seemed to be in charge. His name was, according to the rank insignia on his chest. He walked like he owned everything he saw. People moved out of their way. Smaller aliens pressed themselves against walls. Even the proud insect warriors from the hive clusters lowered their heads as they passed. Minu paid the fees, his hands shaking with barely controlled anger. This was wrong. This was bullying. But what could humanity do? They had 50 ships in total. They had 50,000. He turned to find in. His wife was looking at medical supplies from a vendor, had seen something that caught her attention and had stepped away just for a moment. She was looking at a display of colorful crystals that hung in the air, spinning and glowing. She didn't see the enforcer walking behind her. She took a step backward, admiring the crystals, and bumped into his leg. It was an accident, a small mistake, a child not paying attention. Looked down at her. His yellow eyes showed no warmth, no understanding, just annoyance. Inferior creature, he said in a deep, rumbling voice. "Your kind should learn respect." Looked up at him, confused and scared. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." Rushed over, putting herself between thee and her daughter. "Please, she's just a child. She didn't mean any harm." Minyu was already running toward them, his heart pounding. He could see what was happening. He could feel the danger. Raised one of his forearms. Blue energy crackled around his palm. A lesson must be taught. Minor species must know their place. "No," Minyu shouted, but he was too far away. The plasma blast hit in the chest. The little girl's body flew backward, crashed against a metal wall, and crumpled to the ground. The smell of burned flesh filled the air. Her eyes stared at nothing. Time seemed to stop. The entire marketplace fell silent. Even the seemed surprised by what had happened. Screamed. It was a sound that came from somewhere deep inside her soul, a mother's anguish that needed no translation. She fell to her knees beside her daughter, pulling the small body into her arms, rocking back and forth. Minyu reached them, his mind unable to process what he was seeing. His daughter, his little girl who loved to draw pictures of stars, who wanted to be a scientist when she grew up, who had just learned to play the piano before they left Earth. Gone. He looked up at, that was already walking away unconcerned. To him it had been nothing, less than nothing, just swatting an annoying insect. Other humans from the new dawn rushed over. Some tried to help, others stared in shock. One man, younger and angrier, tried to attack but was held back by his friends. The station commander appeared, a massive female with silver scales. She looked at the scene with cold indifference. "The matter is closed. The child should have been more careful. No laws were broken." "No laws." Minyu's voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made people step back. "He murdered a child. He disciplined an inferior creature that showed disrespect," the commander said. "Under law, this is acceptable. If you disagree, you may file a complaint with the Empire. It will be ignored." She turned and walked away. Commander had been watching through security cameras. His face appeared on Minyu's communicator, pale and shocked. "Minyu, I saw everything. I'm sending ships right now. We're getting you out of there." But Minyu couldn't hear him. He knelt beside his wife and daughter, was still screaming, but no sound came out anymore. She just held, trying to will life back into the small body. Minyu picked them both up, carrying his family back to the ship. Other humans cleared a path, their faces showing horror and rage. Some were crying. Others looked ready to fight. As the new dawn disconnected from the station and began its journey home, Minyu sat in his quarters, was sedated in the medical bay, her mind broken by what she had witnessed. His body lay on a table, covered with a white sheet. Minyu stared at his hands. They were shaking, not from fear, from rage so pure and intense that it felt like fire burning inside his chest. His communicator buzzed. It was a message from Earth. The government wanted a full report. They wanted details. Minyu recorded a message. His voice was calm, but his eyes were dead. "This is Captain Minyu of the New Dawn. Today, an enforcer named murdered my 8-year-old daughter for the crime of accidentally touching him. The government has declared this acceptable under their law. They have refused to apologize. They have refused to show any remorse." He paused, and something dark entered his voice. "I request permission to resign my commission. I have other work to do now." The message sent. Minyu looked at the stars outside his window. Somewhere out there was laughing about what he had done. Somewhere out there, the Empire continued to treat humans like they were worthless. They would learn, Minyu promised himself. They would all learn what happened when you hurt a human child. They would learn what hell really meant. The news spread across human space like wildfire. Within hours, every colony, every station, every ship knew what had happened. An 8-year-old girl named had been killed by an enforcer for the crime of accidentally touching him. The refused to apologize. They said it was legal under their law. Humanity was shocked. Then humanity became angry. On Earth, billions of people watched the security footage that Commander had sent. They saw the little girl looking at crystals. They saw her bump into the alien. They saw the casual way he raised his hand and killed her. They saw her mother screaming. They saw her father's face turn from shock to something darker. Protests erupted in every major city. People gathered outside embassy buildings, shouting and throwing rocks. Some wanted war immediately. Others demanded justice through diplomacy. But everyone agreed on one thing: this could not stand. The United Nations Security Council called an emergency meeting. Admiral, a 60-year-old military commander with gray hair and hard eyes, stood before the council members. He had fought in Earth's last major war, the resource conflicts of 2245. He knew what war cost. He also knew when war became necessary. "Members of the council," he began, his voice steady and strong. "We have sent 12 diplomatic messages to the Empire. We have asked for an apology. We have asked for to face trial. We have asked for compensation to the family. They have responded to none of them." A council member from Europe raised her hand. "What about the other alien species? Surely they will support us. Surely they see this as wrong." Dr. Sara, a specialist, stepped forward. She was young, only 35, but she had studied alien cultures for a decade. Her reports about them had been ignored until now. "I warned you about this 2 years ago," she said, her voice bitter. "They believe they are superior to all other species. They have crushed 17 civilizations in the past 500 years. Other aliens are terrified of them. No one will help us." "Then we stand alone," Admiral said simply. Another council member, an older man from Asia, spoke up. "How can we fight them? They have 50,000 warships. We have 50. They control 400 star systems. We control one. It would be suicide." Admiral pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed schematics for weapons, ships, and technologies that made several council members gasp. "For the past 30 years we have been preparing," explained. "We hoped we would never need these weapons. We hoped the galaxy would be peaceful. We were wrong." He highlighted one of the designs. "This is a stealth ship. It bends light around itself. Their sensors cannot detect it. We can slip past their defenses." Another design appeared. "These are kinetic weapons. We accelerate asteroids to nearly the speed of light. The impact has the force of nuclear weapons but leaves no radiation. They are cheap to make and impossible to stop once launched." "And this," he said, pointing to a biological weapon design, "is something we hoped never to use. A pathogen designed specifically for biology. It will make them suffer." The room fell silent. These were weapons of terror, not honor. These were weapons designed to hurt, to scare, to make enemies regret crossing humanity. "Are we really considering this?" someone asked quietly. Admiral looked around the room. "They killed a child and laughed about it. They consider us insects. They will do this again and again unless we show them there are consequences. Yes, I am considering this. I am recommending this." The vote was taken. It was unanimous. Project Retaliation was approved, but it would be kept secret. They would not know what was coming until it was too late. Far from Earth, on a small colony called New Hope, Minu sat alone in a dark room. He had resigned from the colonial service, was in a hospital, unable to speak or eat. The doctors said she had suffered a complete mental breakdown. She just stared at walls, trapped inside her own mind with the memory of holding her dead daughter. There was a knock on the door. Minu ignored it. The knock came again. A familiar voice called out, "Brother, open the door. I know you're in there." Minu finally stood and opened the door. His brother stood there, wearing a black military uniform, was younger by 5 years but looked older now. He worked in special operations, the secret military units that did the dangerous work nobody talked about. "I came as soon as I heard," said, stepping inside. He saw the gun on the table next to Minu's chair. "Were you planning to use that?" "Maybe," Minu said honestly. "What's the point of living in a universe where children can be murdered and nothing happens?" Picked up the gun and removed the ammunition. "The point is revenge. The point is making them pay, but you can't do that if you're dead." Minu looked at his brother. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Project Retaliation," said. "I'm talking about showing the what happens when they mess with humans. Admiral is putting together special teams, people who have reasons to fight, people who won't hesitate when the time comes." He paused. "People like you." "I'm not a soldier," Minu said. "No, but you're a ship captain. You know how to navigate, how to command, and you have something else we need." Looked his brother in the eyes. "You have nothing left to lose. That makes you dangerous." Minu thought about her smile, about the way she laughed, about how she would never laugh again because some alien decided her life didn't matter. "What would I have to do?" he asked. "Whatever it takes to win," answered. In another part of the colony at the hospital, something unexpected happened. Suddenly stood up from her bed. The nurses were shocked. She had not moved in days. Now she walked to the window and stared out at the stars. A doctor approached her carefully. "Mrs., can you hear me?" Turned to look at him. Her eyes were no longer empty. They were filled with cold determination. "I want to work," she said. "Work? You need to rest to heal." "I want to work for the military," continued, her voice steady and hard. "I'm a doctor. I understand biology, chemistry, medicine. I can help create weapons, biological weapons, things that will make them suffer like I've suffered." The doctor was horrified. "That's not. You're a healer. You took an oath to do no harm." His laugh was bitter and broken. "I took an oath to protect my family too. Look how well that worked out. The need to learn that killing a human child has consequences. I'm going to teach them that lesson." Within a week, both Minu and had enlisted in Project Retaliation. They worked in different divisions, rarely seeing each other. Some said this was mercy, that they reminded each other too much of what they had lost. Others said it was because they had each become different people, changed by grief into something darker. Admiral sent one final message to the Empire. It was broadcast on all frequencies, translated into every galactic language. The message was simple and direct. "To the Empire, you have murdered a human child named. Her crime was accidentally touching one of your enforcers. You have refused to apologize. You have refused to provide justice. You have 1 week to surrender the enforcer called for trial under human law. If you refuse, there will be consequences. This is your only warning." On the Emperor Al watched the message with his advisors. They all laughed. The Emperor's voice boomed with amusement. "The insects threaten us. How entertaining. What do they think they can do with their tiny fleet?" His military commander, a veteran of many wars, was less amused. "My lord, perhaps we should take this seriously. Humans are unpredictable." "They are weak," the Emperor said dismissively. "They are beneath our notice. Ignore their message. If they try anything foolish, crush them. Now leave me. I have more important matters to attend to." The week passed. No response came from the Empire. On Earth, Admiral stood in a command center deep underground. Around him, screens showed the positions of human ships, all moving into position. Stealth vessels, attack fighters, and ships carrying weapons the galaxy had never seen before. "All units report ready," an officer said. Took a deep breath. This would change everything. Humanity would either survive and earn respect or be destroyed completely. There was no middle ground. "Begin Operation Retaliation," he ordered. And across the galaxy, humanity struck back. Captain sat in the pilot seat of the Silent Fury, humanity's first true stealth warship. The ship was small, only 30 meters long, with a crew of just 20 people. But it could do something no ship could do. It could become invisible. The technology was simple in theory but hard to build. The hull bent light around the ship, making it disappear. The engines ran cold, producing almost no heat signature. Even the power systems were shielded to prevent energy detection. To anyone watching, the silent fury simply did not exist. "We're approaching the border," his co-pilot said nervously. He was young, barely 25, and this was his first real mission. "Their patrol ships are everywhere." "They won't see us," said calmly. She was 38, a veteran pilot who had flown supply runs through asteroid fields that would make most people sick with fear. This mission, though, this was different. This was about making the pay. Just maintain course and stay quiet. The silent fury slipped past 3 patrol ships without being detected. It flew through their sensor nets like a ghost. Within hours, it reached the outer system of the colony world called Vex Prime. The planet was home to 2 billion. It had massive shield generators protecting it from attack. Hundreds of defense satellites orbited the planet, ready to shoot down any approaching ships. The thought they were safe, they were wrong. On Earth, in a dark room filled with computer screens, worked at a keyboard. He was a cyber warfare specialist, one of the best hackers humanity had ever produced. He was thin and pale from spending too much time indoors, but his mind was sharp and dangerous. "I'm in their network," he said to the other people in the room. "Their security is, honestly, it's terrible. They've never faced anyone who fights like this. They don't even have proper firewalls." Admiral's voice came through the speaker. "Can you take control of their defense satellites?" "Already done," said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm uploading new targeting parameters now. In about 10 minutes, their own satellites will fire on their own shield generators." "Outstanding, proceed." On Vex Prime, the defense commander noticed something strange on his screens. The satellites were reorienting themselves, pointing at the planet instead of at space. "What's happening?" he demanded. "Why are the weapons turning?" A technician frantically worked at his console. "I don't know, sir. The system won't respond to commands." The satellites fired. Massive energy beams struck the shield generators on the planet's surface. Explosions lit up the night sky. Within minutes, the planetary shields were down. That's when the rocks arrived. Was an orbital bombardment strategist. Her job was to calculate trajectories, velocities, and impact points. She was good at math, better than most computers. Some called her cold and emotionless. She called herself practical. 3 months earlier, human ships had grabbed several asteroids from uninhabited systems. They had accelerated these rocks to incredible speeds, nearly 20% of the speed of light. Then they aimed them at worlds and let physics do the rest. The first asteroid hit Vex Prime's largest city with the force of 1,000 nuclear bombs. The shockwave flattened buildings for hundreds of kilometers. The heat turned sand into glass. Millions died in seconds. The on Vex Prime screamed in terror and confusion. They had never been attacked like this. In all their wars with other species, combat happened in space between ships, honorable battles where the strong defeated the weak. Nobody attacked civilian populations. Nobody used such crude, terrifying weapons. But humans didn't fight honorably. Humans fought to win. Captain watched the destruction from orbit, her face expressionless. Her younger brother had been on Epsilon 7 when was killed. He had tried to stop them from dismissing the matter. They had beaten him unconscious and thrown him out an airlock. His body still floated somewhere in space. So felt nothing as she watched cities burn. This was justice. "Target the military bases next," she ordered. "Leave the civilian centers alone from now on. We're not like them." Commandos infiltrated a warship called the Dominant Fist. There were 12 humans in his team, all wearing dark combat suits that helped them blend into shadows. They had boarded the ship while it was docked at a space station, hiding in a cargo container. They had never considered the possibility of enemies inside their own ships. They had no internal security, no cameras in most corridors, no guards patrolling the lower decks. Why would they need such things? Who would dare? His team moved through the ship like ghosts. They placed small explosive charges on critical systems, engines, weapons, life support, communications. Then they waited. When the dominant fist tried to launch and join the defense of Vex Prime pressed a button on his detonator. The charges exploded. The ship's engines overloaded, sending energy feedback through every system. Fires erupted across 3 decks. The weapons arrays melted. Life support failed in half the ship. The dominant fist crashed back onto the station, killing hundreds of, and his team escaped in the chaos, stealing a small shuttle and disappearing into space. This pattern repeated across territory. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Defense systems turned against them. Rocks moving faster than missiles destroyed cities and bases. Warships exploded from the inside. Supply convoys vanished without a trace. The panicked, their military commanders screamed at their subordinates. How are they doing this? We have the superior technology. We have the larger fleet. Why can't we stop them? But the answer was simple. Humans didn't fight fair. Humans had evolved on a planet where everything tried to kill them. They had learned to be clever, to be sneaky, to use every advantage they could find. They had evolved as the dominant predators on their world. They had never learned to fear. They had never learned to adapt. Now they were learning, but the lessons came with terrible prices. Its biological weapon was released on the military world of Station. It spread through the air, invisible and odorless. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly began to feel pain in their joints. Their scales started to itch. Their eyes burned. The pain grew worse each day. The disease didn't kill, not directly. That would have been merciful. Instead, it made every moment agony. Soldiers couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, couldn't function. Their proud military became a collection of suffering, desperate beings. The cure existed, had created it along with the disease, but she sent a message with it. You can have the cure when you surrender for trial. They tried to develop their own cure. They failed. Their medical science was advanced, but they had never dealt with diseases. Their species didn't get sick naturally. They had no immune systems to speak of. The weapon created exploited that weakness perfectly. Himself heard about the attacks from his fortress on a remote world. He had been celebrating his promotion, earned by his ruthless enforcement of superiority. Now he watched reports of burning cities and dying soldiers. This is about the human child, one of his subordinates said nervously. They want revenge for what you did. Laughed, but there was a crack of fear in his voice. They're insects, they can't possibly win. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. The humans were winning, not through superior technology or larger numbers. They were winning through pure viciousness, through tactics they had never imagined. Minyu was part of the team that finally found. They tracked him through intercepted communications, narrowed down his location and planned their assault carefully, led the attack on the fortress. It was supposed to be impregnable. It fell in 3 hours. Fought with desperate strength, his 4 arms wielding energy weapons. But human soldiers moved faster, using cover and teamwork. They shot him with stunners until he couldn't stand. Then they dragged him to a shuttle. Minyu stepped forward. For the first time since his death, he looked directly at the being who had killed her. His yellow eyes showed confusion and fear. Why? They asked in broken human language. Why do this? She was just a child of an inferior species. Minyu's response was cold and quiet. That's exactly why. They broadcast its trial across every communication channel in the galaxy. Every species watched as humans presented evidence, gave a chance to defend himself, and found him guilty. The execution was broadcast too, was placed in an airlock, and the outer door was opened. He died the same way died, suddenly and without mercy. But unlike he knew it was coming, unlike he deserved it. 3 colony worlds were now in ruins. Their fleet was scattered and afraid. Their soldiers were sick and dying. An admiral sent another message. "This is just the beginning. We've used 30% of our military capacity. Surrender now or learn what happens when humans stop holding back." For the first time in their long history, the Empire knew true fear. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. For 500 years, the Empire had been unstoppable. They had conquered 17 civilizations. They had never lost a war. Now they were being torn apart by a species they had called insects. Other alien races gathered in secret councils, whispering among themselves. The insect-like hive clusters, who had been defeated by them a century ago, felt hope for the first time in generations. The aquatic Delphi, who paid tribute to the every year, quietly stopped sending payments. The crystalline Harmony, who had lost 3 colony worlds to expansion, began rebuilding their military. But none of them helped humanity. They were too afraid that they might still win, or perhaps they were too afraid of what humanity had become. Emperor Al sat on his throne of carved bone, his scales dim with stress. Around him, his advisors argued loudly. Some wanted to negotiate peace. Others demanded total war. The emperor's 4 fists clenched and unclenched with rage. "Silence," he roared. The advisors fell quiet immediately. "I will not surrender to insects. I will not negotiate with beings who should be grateful we allow them to exist." He stood, his massive form towering over everyone in the throne room. "Assemble the Grand Fleet, every ship we have. We will crush Earth itself. Without there, the humans will collapse." His military commander, a veteran named, spoke carefully. "My lord, the humans have proven very dangerous. Perhaps we should reconsider." "Are you afraid of insects?" the emperor demanded. "No, my lord. I'm afraid of underestimating them again." But the emperor would not listen. He gave the order. 10,000 warships would attack Earth. It would be the largest military fleet ever assembled. Nothing could stand against it. The fleet gathered in deep space, far from human eyes, or so they thought. Captains' stealth ships watched from the shadows, counting every vessel, recording every detail. The information flowed back to Earth. Smiled when he saw the fleet's size. "They're going to attack Earth all at once. How predictable." "Can you do it?" Admiral asked. "Oh, yes," replied, his fingers already dancing across his keyboard. "Their fleet operates on a central navigation network. Every ship syncs to the same master system for hyperspace jumps. It's efficient, but it has a weakness. I can introduce errors into their calculations." "What kind of errors?" "The kind that scatter them across 50 different star systems, instead of having them all arrive at Earth together." Worked for 3 days straight, barely sleeping, living on stimulants and determination. He hacked into the fleet's central computer through a maintenance port that they didn't even know was vulnerable. He changed numbers, adjusted coordinates, modified the hyperspace calculations by tiny amounts that would compound over long distances. The Grand Fleet activated their hyperspace drives. 10,000 ships vanished from normal space, traveling faster than light toward Earth. The journey would take 6 hours. When they arrived, they would destroy humanities and end this war. But 6 hours later, the fleet did not arrive at Earth. Instead, ships emerged in 50 different locations, scattered across hundreds of light years. Commanders screamed at their navigation officers, demanding to know what happened. Some ships appeared in empty space, alone and vulnerable. Others emerged near asteroid fields or dead stars. A few unfortunate vessels materialized inside the gravity wells of gas giants and were crushed before they could escape. Captain stealth ships had followed them. Now, human attack groups appeared from nowhere, hitting the separated vessels. A group of 50 ships, cut off from the main fleet, tried to form a defensive formation. Commandos had already infiltrated 3 of them. The ships exploded from within. The formation collapsed into chaos. Bombardment teams targeted supply depots and fuel stations. Without supplies, the scattered fleet couldn't regroup. Ships drifted in space, running low on power and food. Some tried to surrender to human forces. Others fought to the death, proud even in defeat. The empire was collapsing, not from overwhelming force but from 1,000 small cuts. Humans didn't fight one big battle. They fought 100 small ones, each designed to hurt, to weaken, to demoralize. Ships became legends of terror. Crews refused to go on patrol, terrified of the invisible ships that appeared without warning and disappeared before they could respond. Some abandoned their posts entirely, preferring a rest to facing the human ghosts. Diseases spread to more worlds. The Empire's medical facilities were overwhelmed with suffering soldiers and civilians. Felt nothing as she created new variants, each more painful than the last. She remembered Holding's body. That memory killed any compassion she might have had left. Minyu led raids deep into territory. His targets were psychological as much as military. He would capture commanders, give them fair trials, and execute them publicly. The message was clear. There were consequences for thinking you were superior. There were consequences for hurting others without remorse. Finally, Minyu's team reached the capital world. Getting past the defenses should have been impossible, but had already disabled half the security systems. Commandos had sabotaged the orbital defense platforms. Captains' ships had cleared a path through the patrol fleets. Minyu walked into Emperor Al's throne room alone and unarmed. Guards pointed weapons at him, but he didn't stop walking. The Emperor stared in disbelief as this small human approached his throne. "You cannot be here," Al said. "This is impossible. Our security is gone," Minyu finished. "Your fleet is scattered. Your worlds burn. Your soldiers die from diseases we created. Your empire is finished." He stopped at the base of the throne and looked up at the massive Emperor. "All of this because you killed a child and refused to apologize." The Emperor's scales flushed with rage. "She was nothing, an inferior creature." "She was everything to me," Minyu said quietly. "She was my daughter. Her name was, she liked to draw pictures of stars. She wanted to be a scientist. She was 8 years old." His voice hardened. "You could have apologized. You could have shown an ounce of regret. You could have demonstrated that you understood killing a child was wrong. Instead, you laughed at us." Minyu placed a data pad on the steps leading to the throne. "That contains information about Earth's military capacity. We've been using 30% of what we have. We have weapons we haven't deployed yet. We have strategies we haven't tried. We can destroy every world you control within 1 month." The Emperor stared at the data pad, his 4 hands trembling. "You made a mistake," Minyu continued. "You thought we were weak because we value life. You thought we were primitive because we only recently reached the stars. But here's what you didn't understand. We evolved on a planet where everything tried to kill us. Ice ages, predators, diseases. We survived by being clever, by being ruthless when necessary, by never giving up." He turned to leave, then looked back. "You laughed when we asked for justice. So we showed you what humans become when they stop being civilized. We showed you the monsters that evolution created. This is your last chance. Surrender, or we will show you what real hell looks like." Minyu walked out of the throne room. No one tried to stop him. Guards stepped aside, their weapons lowered. The Emperor sat frozen on his throne, staring at the data pad that showed exactly how much worse things could become. That night, Emperor Al reviewed the data. He saw weapon designs that made their military tech look primitive. He saw strategies that could destroy entire sectors. He saw that humanity had been holding back, showing restraint even in their rage. For the first time in his long life, the Emperor understood fear. For the first time, he understood that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't insects. They were apex predators, and he had threatened their young. He called his advisors. His voice was quiet, defeated. "Prepare a message to Earth. We wish to discuss terms of surrender." Admiral received the message at Earth Command. He read it 3 times, making sure it was real. The Empire, the greatest power in the galaxy, was asking to surrender to humanity. He looked at the reports from the field: 20 million dead, 15 colony worlds destroyed or heavily damaged, the Grand Fleet scattered and decimated. It had taken 3 months, 3 months to bring an empire to its knees. He thought about a little girl who died for nothing, about how her death had sparked a war that changed the galaxy forever. Send them the terms, ordered: full surrender, complete disarmament, public admission of guilt, war reparations, and they will help us establish laws protecting children of all species. As the message went out, sat back in his chair. They had won. Humanity had proven it would not be pushed around. They had shown the galaxy that there were consequences for cruelty. But the cost had been terrible, and wondered if they had become the very thing they fought against. The peace treaty was signed on neutral ground at Epsilon 7 space station where everything had begun. The delegation arrived first, their heads lowered in shame. Emperor Al himself did not come. He had abdicated his throne, unable to bear the weight of his failure. The new empress, a younger named, led the delegation. Her scales were pale, her movements cautious. Admiral represented humanity. Beside him stood representatives from every human colony. Minyu was there too, wearing a simple black suit. He had requested to be present. This was where his daughter died. This was where it needed to end. The terms were harsh but fair. The Empire would reduce their military by 80%. They would provide technology and resources to humanity as war reparations for the next 50 years. They would publicly admit that killing had been wrong, that their attitude of superiority had been wrong, that they had learned a terrible lesson. But the most important term was the last one. Together, humanity and the Empire would establish law throughout the galaxy. It would protect children of all species from harm. Anyone who killed a child, regardless of their species or status, would face trial and punishment. The law would be enforced by a joint council with representatives from every willing civilization. Empress read the terms aloud, her voice breaking several times. When she finished, she looked at Minyu directly. On behalf of my people, I apologize for what was done to your daughter. I apologize for the arrogance that led to her death. I apologize for the pain we caused you and your family. Minyu stood silent for a long moment. Everyone in the room waited to see what he would do. Finally, he spoke. I don't forgive you. I don't know if I ever can, but I accept your apology, and I accept that your people will work to ensure this never happens again. The treaty was signed. The Empire, which had ruled 400 star systems for centuries, became a shadow of its former self. Humanity became a major power in the galaxy overnight. Other species watched with a mix of respect and fear. The humans had proven they would protect their own, no matter the cost. But victory came with a terrible price that was only now becoming clear. Admiral retired 3 months after the treaty was signed. He was only 63, young enough to serve for another decade. But he couldn't continue. The nightmares were too strong. He saw the burning cities every time he closed his eyes. He heard the screams of civilians caught in bombardments. 20 million dead. Most of them had never harmed anyone. They just lived under a government that made terrible choices. I became what I hated, he told his wife one night. I became someone who kills civilians to win wars. I'm no better than they were. She held him as he cried. There were no words that could help. Victory felt hollow. Captain continued flying missions for 6 more months. Then one day, she landed her ship and never got back in the pilot's seat. The Silent Fury sat in a hangar, unused, spent her days sitting by a window, staring at stars. Her crew tried to talk to her, but she barely responded. The ghost of war had settled into her bones. She had killed thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Most never saw her coming. Most died confused, not understanding why their own defenses were killing them. She told herself they deserved it. She told herself it was justice for her brother, for humanity. But the justifications felt emptier each day. Became addicted to the stimulants he had used during the war. He couldn't function without them. His hands shook when he tried to work. His brilliant mind, which had brought down an empire through ones and zeros, couldn't focus on simple tasks anymore. Friends tried to help him recover. He pushed them away. He was more comfortable with machines than people now. Stop sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the asteroid impacts. She saw cities turn to glass. She had calculated every trajectory, every impact point, every casualty estimate. She knew exactly how many people died from her work. The number haunted her. She started taking medication to stay awake, afraid of what she would dream. Survived 30 missions into enemy territory without a scratch. 2 months after the war ended, he tripped on stairs in his apartment and broke his leg. Something about this broke him mentally. During the war, death had been everywhere, but he had survived through skill and luck. Now, in peacetime, he was defeated by stairs. He laughed about it, but the laugh was bitter. He realized the war had stolen something from him. He didn't feel alive unless he was in danger. Left the military and went back to medicine. She tried to be a healer again, tried to save lives instead of creating weapons to take them. But patients looked at her differently now. They knew what she had done. They knew she had created diseases that caused suffering on a scale rarely seen in galactic history. A young doctor approached her once. "How could you do it? You're a doctor. You took an oath." Looked at her with empty eyes. "They killed my daughter. They laughed about it. I wanted them to suffer. I wanted them to understand pain." She paused. "I achieved that goal. Now I have to live with what I've done." She worked 16-hour days, trying to save enough lives to balance the scale. But she knew the scale would never balance. Some things couldn't be fixed. Minyu was perhaps the most changed. He accomplished what he set out to do, was dead. The had surrendered. Justice of a sort had been served, but his daughter was still dead, was still broken. The universe was still unfair. He visited its memorial every day. It was a simple stone on Earth, in a garden that overlooked the ocean. Hundreds of other memorials surrounded it, tributes to others who died during first contact, during the war, during humanity's violent introduction to the galaxy. Found him there one morning. The brothers sat in silence for a while, watching the sunrise. Finally spoke. "Do you think she would be proud of us?" Minyu thought about his daughter, about her kindness, her curiosity, her joy at discovering new things. "No," he said honestly. "She would be horrified. She would ask why we killed so many people. She would ask why we couldn't find another way." Was there another way? "I don't know, maybe. Maybe if we had been smarter, more patient, less angry." Minyu stood up, his joints aching. He felt old, much older than his 45 years. "We showed them hell. We proved humans aren't weak, but we also proved we can be monsters when pushed hard enough." "So what do we do now?" asked. "We try to be better than we were," Minyu replied. "We make sure law actually works. We make sure no other child, human or alien, dies the way she did. We try to build something good from all this pain." 5 years later, Minyu stood in a very different place. It was a colony world called New Beginning, jointly settled by humans, and the terraforming was still in progress, but children of both species played together in the streets, learning each other's languages, sharing games. Minyu tended a garden growing earth vegetables in alien soil. The work was simple, peaceful. It was healing slowly. A young child, barely 5 years old, wandered into his garden. The child's scales were bright green, untouched by war. The child stumbled, about to fall into a thorn bush. Without thinking, Minyu caught the child, setting them back on their feet gently. The child's mother, a former soldier, hurried over. She had fought against humans during the war. She still bore scars from combat. She saw Minyu holding her child and froze, fear crossing her face. Then she saw the gentleness in his actions, saw him brush dirt from the child's scales. "Thank you," she said quietly in accented human language. Minyu nodded. The child smiled at him and ran off to play. The mother lingered a moment. "I know who you are," she said. "I know what you did during the war. I know what we did to start it." She paused. Can there be forgiveness? Minyu looked at the playing children, human and laughing together, unaware of the blood that had been spilled. I don't know, he said honestly, but maybe we can try for them. The woman nodded and walked away. Minyu returned to his garden. Above him, a star shone in the daytime sky. Had told him once that some cultures believed dead children became stars, watching over those they loved. Minyu looked up at that particular star and whispered, "We showed them hell, we made them pay, we made them respect us. But now maybe we can show them something better. We can show them humanity." A breeze blew through the garden. Somewhere a child laughed. Human or Minyu couldn't tell. It didn't matter. They were just children playing in the sun, safe under laws that protected them. It wasn't redemption. The dead couldn't be brought back. The pain couldn't be erased. But it was a start. It was a hope that maybe, eventually, the scars would heal. That maybe something good could grow from all the terrible things that had been done. Minyu returned to his gardening. The work continued. Life continued. And slowly, very slowly, the galaxy learned to be better.